Every story has its hero, but what about the guy behind the scenes who gives the hero the magic words, heals their near fatal wounds, and literally outsmarts other gods to make the entire possible? Without this guy, the whole story falls apart. What's going on, everyone? My name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a fantasy author, and welcome to Myth HQ. Today we're talking about the ultimate mythological fixer, the Egyptian god Thoth. While gods like Ra, Osiris, and Horus get the spotlight, none of their stories would have worked without this ibis-headed god of wisdom pulling the strings and cleaning up everyone's mess. While most gods had a clear-cut origin story, Thoth's was a bit more complicated. It was almost like the Egyptians couldn't quite agree on where he came from, so they just decided he was always there when he was needed. One story says he was born directly from the lips of the sun god Ra at the beginning of time. Ra spoke and Thoth came into being, basically making him the living embodiment of the divine word. Another tradition, from his main cult center at Hermopolis, claimed he was self-created. He just willed himself into existence, then laid a cosmic egg that hatched the sun and the rest of the universe. No parents, no drama, just pure, unadulterated, magical creation. But my favorite origin story for him is the one that says he was born from the conflict between Horus and Set. In one of their many brawls, Set did something unspeakable to Horus. To get revenge, Horus captured Set's vital essence on some lettuce that Set then ate. Don't ask. The point is, this act somehow resulted in Thoth emerging from Set's forehead. This origin perfectly defines his role. He is the god of balance, born from the clash between order and chaos. He wasn't on Team Horus or Team Set, he was on Team Ma'at, the universal principle of truth, justice, and cosmic harmony. This knack for solving impossible problems became his trademark. Take the goddess Nut for the sky. She and her husband Geb, the earth, were in love, but her grandfather Ra was furious about it. In a fit of jealous rage, Ra cursed Nut, decreeing that she could not give birth on any day of the 360-day calendar. She was pregnant, but her children could never be born. The divine lineage was at a dead end, and the cosmic order was threatened. So who do you call? Thoth, of course. He didn't challenge Ra directly, because that would have been foolish. Instead, he went to Khonshu, the god of the moon, and challenged him to a game of dice, or an ancient board game called Senet. The stakes were simple: a little bit of the moon's light. Thoth, being the god of knowledge and strategy, handily won. And over several games, he accumulated enough moonlight to create 5 brand new days. Since these 5 days weren't part of the original 360-day calendar, they fell outside of Ra's curse. On these 5 extra days, Nut gave birth to 5 of the most important deities in the entire pantheon: Osiris, Horus the Elder, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Thoth didn't just save a goddess, he literally changed time itself and allowed the main players of the Egyptian mythology to even exist. And that was just a side quest for him. His real work came later. After Osiris was tragically murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, his wife Isis traveled all over Egypt to find the pieces of his body, and she found all but one. The final crucial piece had been eaten by a fish, and the resurrection was impossible. But impossible is just a puzzle for Thoth. He gave Isis the sacred words, the exact magical incantation needed to fashion a replacement for Osiris and bring him back to life just long enough for her to conceive their son Horus. Without Thoth, Osiris would have remained dead and scattered, and Horus would never have been able to avenge him. The entire myth, and indeed the very core of the Egyptian story of death and rebirth, hinges on Thoth stepping in with the right knowledge at the right time. He later saved a young Horus from a fatal poison sting and stood by him as a wise counselor in his long, brutal fight against Set for the throne of Egypt. Thoth wasn't the hero of the story, but he was the one who made sure the hero could win. By the way, as you may have noticed, I do not do sponsors or affiliates in these videos because we're completely self-funded, which lets me tell you these stories without any additional interruptions. But I do have one thing you might be interested in, and that's my own fantasy library. It's where my team and I publish all our mythology-inspired fantasy novels set in this massive shared universe where all myths and gods coexist, although every series kind of stands on its own. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's how we're able to fund this channel. This is one of the books that you'll get, complete with the audiobook as well. This is the first of an 8-book series in there, and it has some Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel mythology sprinkled in there, some deep lore, so I think you'll like that. Anyway, so who was this divine fixer really? The Egyptians called him the Jahuti, which means he who is like the ibis. He was one of their oldest gods, with worship dating back to the pre-dynastic period around 6000 BCE. His influence was so profound that pharaohs were named after him, like Thutmose, which means born of Thoth. He wasn't just a character in a story, he was woven into the fabric of Egyptian society for a long time, millennia. His physical appearance often symbolized his function. and most often he's shown as a man with the head of an ibis, a water bird with a long curved beak that looks like a scribe's pen. And this was no accident. The Egyptians credited him with inventing writing itself, the sacred hieroglyphs. For them, writing wasn't just record keeping, it was a magical act. To write something down was to give it permanence and power. Thoth, as the master of divine words, held the keys to reality itself. He was also depicted as a baboon, often seen sitting calmly with his paws on his knees, and this form connected him to the measurement of time and the moon, as baboons were known to screech at the rising sun. In this form, he was sometimes called Aan, the god of equilibrium, who would sit atop the scales during the judgment of the dead. And that was perhaps his most crucial role for the average Egyptian. After death, a person's soul journeyed to the Hall of Truth for the weighing of the heart ceremony. Your heart, which the Egyptians believed held the record of all your life's deeds, was placed on a scale opposite the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth and cosmic order. Thoth presided over the scales as the divine scribe, and he was there to record the verdict impartially and accurately. If your heart was lighter than the feather, you earned eternal life. If it was heavy with sin, it was thrown to the monster Amet, the devourer of souls, and you ceased to exist. In that final terrifying moment, it was Thoth who documented your ultimate fate, and his records were absolute. His main city was Khmunu, which the Greeks later called Hermopolis, or the city of Hermes. This was the intellectual and spiritual center of his cult. Archaeologists have found massive catacombs there filled with literally hundreds of thousands of mummified ibises and baboons left as offerings by pilgrims seeking his wisdom and favor. But Thoth's influence didn't end with the ancient Egypt. When the Greeks arrived, they immediately saw the parallels between Thoth and their own god Hermes. Both were gods of writing, wisdom, and magic, and both served as messengers. They merged the two into a single figure, Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes the Thrice Great, borrowing a title that the Egyptians had long used for Thoth. This new syncretic deity became a legendary figure of ancient wisdom. A whole body of literature known as the Hermetica was attributed to him, containing secret teachings on alchemy, astrology, and the nature of the divine. The most famous of these texts is the Emerald Tablet, which contains the occult maxim, as above, so below. This idea that the laws of the macrocosm are reflected in the microcosm became a cornerstone of Western esotericism for centuries, influencing everything from Renaissance magic to modern occultism. The ibis-headed god of the Nile had quietly become a foundational figure in Western mystical thought. Thoth's story is about the power of knowledge, wisdom, and balance. He reminds us that the loudest and most powerful aren't always the ones who truly shape the world. Sometimes it's the quiet counselor, the meticulous record keeper, the one who knows the right words to say in the right time and who holds everything together. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the stories behind the stories, you should definitely check out the Fantasy All Access Library. It's my community over on a platform called School, and when you join, you get access to my entire library of ebooks and audiobooks with at least one new book released every month. Plus, you get access to our community of fellow mythology and fantasy nerds, and we do weekly live calls with me where we talk about myths, writing, and building new worlds. So that's the best way to support the channel and get a ton of awesome content in return. The link is in the description.